Now the fuse is lit. They're lit.
It requires drastic social changes, and no one has the guts to implement them.
I gather, according to the latest figures, the unemployment is somewhere about 35%.
I think it is more than that, sir.
The rest of the world thinks that everyone who's black in Handsworth is dishing out dope with the cornflakes, and it's just not true.
4,500 pounds worth of drugs were recovered.
I don't think it was deliberate to attack the Asian shops. I think it was the youngsters who took to the streets. Whoever were the shopkeepers, white, black, Asian, they would have suffered the same. The media's role was appalling one, if I may say so.
I think if you have young blacks who are born here, they're young British, they shouldn't be in a position to be knocked about like that. And I think that young blacks here shouldn't accept this.
You go out there and ask most black people on the road today, right? They have no faith in the police, and that is what will start another riot.
We're dealing here with an unstable area of Birmingham, which has social problems, and in which public money, your money, taxpayers' money, has been poured in recent years. £20 million over recent years into Handsworth alone, and 3/4 of that is government money. The rest comes from local authorities who've made a great effort there. And therefore, that is not the cause of the thing. What happened last night was criminal activity, looting, burning, putting people's lives at risk, and 3 people, so far as we know, lost their lives. That is criminal activity. The reaction to it must be a reaction to crime, criminal investigation, following immediately after the restoration of order.
In Handsworth, the events of the 9th and 10th of September 1985 were known to some as the uprising. To the Home Office, it was criminal activity, which resulted in hundreds of arrests. Chief Constable Geoffrey Deere claimed the riot happened like a bolt from the blue with no warning, but Handsworth has been simmering for many years, and like the rest of Britain's inner cities, boils over with increasing regularity. Over the years, the 56,000 people that live in Handsworth have become increasingly cynical about promises of a better tomorrow. One of the few opportunities local people have to get their point across is through the local pirate radio station, PCRL.
Listen to PCRL Radio, the Sunday Community Interest Programme with me, Mikey B. Now tonight I'll be talking to a couple of the candidates for the local elections, and they are Claire Harrison, who is representing the Conservative Aston Birmingham ward, and also Mr. Qureshi, who is representing the Democratic Party, and he's based in Handsworth. And we'd hoped to have Bert Carlos, who represents Labour and also the Aston ward, but unfortunately he declined our offer. Firstly, can I ask you both, what do you think about multicultural education?
I feel that multicultural education is important, but you have to remember that people over here are basically British, and so multicultural education has to take second place to, for example, learning English and things like that. In some areas, for example, they are teaching Bangladeshi as a first language and English as a second language. I'm afraid I don't think is on.
The question of the mother tongue, it was opposed by the Tory, and there is a need of mother tongue. The teachers are not qualified in these schools. The teachers are not very well trained in these schools.
And talking about the teachers, do you think there is a need for more black teachers?
Yeah, there is a need. There are needs.
And also Asian Indian teachers.
And the black teachers. And the education department, they are saying these people, they are not capable to take the job as a teacher in the area.
You can't say, oh, well, we need more black teachers, therefore we'll lower all the standards.
Why would the fact that black teachers come on the scene be seen as lowering the standards?
No, that's not
And
what I'm
that's how it
saying.
can come across.
Sorry, that was not at all what I meant.
Many misconceptions exist about black children in schools upon which teachers and education departments model their methods. Continuing surveys and reports reinforce rather than dispel these stereotypes.
The 6-year survey of Birmingham schools showed that 4 times as many black children as white were suspended for bad behaviour. The pattern of disruption showed that most blacks were suspended for violence and abuse in the classroom. Whites were more prone to play truant and damage property. Although more black youngsters came from single-parent families, the commissions discounted this as a factor, as very few were classed as problem families by the school.
Black children are supposed to be failing. Normally, I'd put that another way. It's the British education system that is failing those children. However, the reports say the black children are underachieving. Now, I want to change that underachieving. I know that black children can do very well in schools, and I want to be part of that process that makes them improve in school. And that's why I started this school. At least you're not sleeping on me, that's quite nice. Kitten!
Yes? Many families are so concerned about their children's education that self-financing supplementary schools like this exist in most black areas, responding to the needs of the children in a way that state education does not.
These negative stereotypes that are present in many of our schools are lacking. They are not present in the RK School of Excellence because we know how powerful the self-fulfilling prophecy can be. You must be able to spell good because you're a good boy, is that right? That's nice. Okay.
Elizabeth the youngest was examining the stick chiefs.
We concentrate on the communication skills. We want our children to be able to speak very well so that when they go for interviews, they succeed. At 15 years of age, I went for a job. Somewhere along the line, I had a little card to go to this employer. When I got there, I gave the card to a young man who would take any sort of message to the manager or the person in charge. The young man returned with an envelope for me. Inside this envelope was written one word, and that word was unsuitable. The manager did not interview me at all. All he heard, there's a black boy downstairs who's here for an interview. As soon as he heard that it was a black boy, he wrote this stupid word that I considered to be stupid at that time. And I'll say to you very quickly, after reading that word, I died for about 20 minutes, literally. I could not walk out of that building. I decided then that I was going to prove to people of that dirty caliber that young blacks can succeed.
Success in education does not guarantee a job. Even before the recession, young blacks found it hard to find work. Now, with Birmingham's traditional industry all but disappeared, finding a job is almost impossible.
We don't employ as many people today as we used to. We used to employ about 18, and it's only 3 today. But we would be quite happy to stay in this area. You know, we've no wish to move out. We don't mind employing black or Asian people. We have tried in the past. We did take 2 West Indian boys under the Manpower Services Commission training scheme, but we had problems with their attendance. And the one boy particularly, he was a very good lad. He picked up the work very well, and he'd got a good future. It may have been a feeling that the scheme was a dead end. I feel guilty that we employ people for a short time and can't offer them a job at the end of it, and I'm quite certain that we should have offered this boy a job.
The extension of the youth training scheme to 2 years seems to ignore the scepticism felt over its real value. Nevertheless, it has been seen by the government as the cure for youth unemployment in the 80s. Just as in the 70s, community policing was seen as the cure for the increasing alienation of the police from the communities they served.
Whatever trouble might have been brewing was contained in the early 70s when Handsworth was singled out for a unique community policing project. Out went the panda cars, in came the bobbies on their beat. Their job, to get involved with the community. It worked well until 1981. After the Toxteth riots, Handsworth too erupted. Police made over 500 arrests in 2 days of summer riots. 150 people were injured as gangs of youths went on an orgy of looting and destruction. The police officer who'd pioneered the community project resigned soon after.
The trouble is that people within the police service will not give us sufficient credibility, and they don't agree necessarily with what's happening in Handsworth and the style of policing that we have here. And that's the trouble at the present moment, that we're not giving the prominence and credibility that this sort of policing deserves.
Hello. Hello, Tim.
Despite its setbacks, community policing still exists in Handsworth.
PBO stands for Permanent Beat Officer. Beat officers are the backbone of community policing. We'll be on foot almost all the time, walking around the streets, speaking to people, listening to what they've got to say to us, which is very important. And then we can perhaps take back some of their fears, worries and hopes to the police service as an institution.
In the morning, really cup of coffee, bring a flask.
Well, I don't have anywhere to carry it. I've got to rely on you to bring the flask.
When Geoffrey Deere took over from Sir Philip Knights as Chief Constable, it seemed as if he would continue the policy of community consultation.
If the police try to operate in isolation, all we're doing, I think, is putting ourselves out on a limb to police properly, efficiently, effectively, firmly on occasions, but not too firmly too often, one hopes. You have got to know what people want themselves and what style of policing they prefer, and what it is that they see as important in their area, and try and meet it.
I feel that community policing is quite a hard option for the police to take, actually, not a soft one. But the West Midlands Police, and particularly this subdivision, has taken it on for some time now. And my experience is that it is a hopeful sign.
Drugs are openly bought and sold on the streets in Handsworth. Local residents have demanded police action. When the police raided the Villa Cross pub and a nearby cafe, 15 people were charged with drug offences. Yet the raid only increased claims of police harassment.
By no means everybody who frequents the Acapulco cafe uses drugs, but as the owner explains, drug taking continues to be a problem in Handsworth.
It's not a very nice thing, but there's drugs all over Handsworth, you know, and my place was only picked out as a scapegoat, and myself was only picked out as a scapegoat. I think myself personally it's all down to politics. There must be about 80% out of work in Handsworth. You know, it's all right for the government to give them 30 or 40 pounds to survive on, you know. But if they've got a family and child and a house to keep, I mean, that's getting a measly 40 or 50 pounds off the social to have all the family live on. You know, if I was in their position, you know, I think I would do something to get more money. If they did clear my place up and they did close my place down, they'd only move somewhere else, you know. I mean, I don't like the idea of people taking drugs on my premises. But it's not only my premises, it's all over Handsworth. That's why it's happening in the streets.
Since the uprising of last year, the Villa Cross pub has remained closed. The problems of Handsworth, however, did not start with the riots of last year.
You know, I know that in 1976, when I started in Handsworth, that this was going on then. All this hassle that we're having now was the same in 1976, and we brought in community policing to stop it. We had the worst crime. We had more policemen injured on duty. We had all complaints against police. We had the black community against the brown community. We had the Irish community against everybody else. Everyone was fighting amongst themselves. It was shambles. And nobody will take any notice. No one will listen and do something about these kids that are on the street, unemployed, dissatisfied. And we've got to get those kids off the street if we're going to do something.
Is the street and cafe. And society should really be offering the youth something more than that.
Oh, Babylon, you shall be my prey.
The problem of large number of youths on the streets with nothing to do and nowhere to go has compelled some people to find their own solutions by turning flats into makeshift community centres, rather than wait for help from outside.
It seems like a game that the city fathers are playing, which is, let's pretend that, you know, we're doing something for black people, when really we're not.
Well, there's a need for organizations like this because are putting on functions, activities, whatever, to create a better atmosphere in the community.
Sometimes there's nobody here, and then another time between 30 or 50 people. It just depends on the night. And they will come for all different reasons. Sometimes some people come to play a pool or domino. Some people will come. Sometimes we show a video, you know, of certain things like that might be interesting to what we're dealing with. Sometimes we have meetings here. Sometimes it's an advice center to some people because they want to know certain things about certain business. And because we might know, they would come and ask us what kind of step to take.
Before the riots, 81, you know, we applied for buildings and there was none available. And then after the 81 riots, whoop, you look, 6 buildings available, come and pick one.
When the council responded positively to some of the needs of the community that came to light after the 81 riots by providing this building, the misunderstandings and wrangles that followed over funding it produced nothing for the community.
The council is spending a lot of time talking to the residents in Handsworth at the moment because they feel that having spent a lot of money in the last 4 years, and a figure of £26 million was quoted at the Silverman inquiry, that perhaps it's an issue which is rather greater than just simply talking about throwing money at it.
Look at our reception. This is supposed to be a community center for black people. Here we have the pool room, but as you can see, there's no pool table. Nah, nothing else but rubbish. So we can't do it because government would give us the building like this and no money to fix it up. So it can be used constructively and for the benefit of the community. This, if we did get money from the government, would be a little dining room. This would be the kitchen. But no money, so it have to stay like this. We'll probably do some weightlifting in there. And some other physical activity in here. Well, this is a mess. Now, what we want the government to understand is if you're going to give us a building to use, isn't it obvious that it needs money to make it habitable and usable? Because like this, it's no good.
This building has now been demolished.
We've been pouring money into Handsworth for many, many years, and it's just gone like that down the plug hole.
Yes,
useless.
You've just hit the nail on the head. All that someone like Dennis Hurd is saying, £30 million, £40 million been poured into Handsworth since the riots in 1983, in 1981. Where's it all gone? And a lot of people outside say, £40 million spent in Lozelles. Fancy chucking money down after them buggers. There's all that going on down there. They're rioting, setting fire to the place, and you just spent £50 million down there in 12 months. And you mustn't spend any more down there. You've spent enough. Let's not spend it there. Let's go and spend it somewhere else.
No money in your pocket. What you gonna do? If you haven't got the freedom of a pound note, you'll have to steal. To get the pound note, you need a job. To get the job, you need a piece of paper. Qualifications, 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 qualifications.
It has been said that £25 million was spent in Handsworth. That money did not create any job.
Tended to come from the operational units rather than from the permanent beat officers, because I would emphasise the importance of permanent beat officers.
72 were for soft drugs, cannabis, and 17 related to hard drugs, heroin and cocaine.
Consultation with the communities takes place before proposals are made to the Home Office.
After the government rejected calls for a Scarman-type inquiry, Birmingham City Council established its own version under ex-MP Julius Silverman.
A matter of trying to deploy resources in order to deal with them.
Local people stayed away, with only the Chief Constable attracting a crowd made up mostly of journalists.
The Chief Constable was this afternoon giving evidence at the inquiry into the Handsworth riots. He summarised his 80-page report into the disturbances presented yesterday to the Home Secretary. Mr. Deere today re-emphasised his view that the rioting was orchestrated by drug dealers, that the troubles came like a bolt out of the blue, leaving the police with no reserves to put a swift end to the violence that left 2 people dead and many buildings wrecked. But it's his opinions on the use of baton rounds or plastic bullets that have caused the greatest controversy. Their use would have been justified in the Lascelles Road, says Mr. Deere. Now the chairman of the police committee has threatened to resign if the bullets are ever used.
I think it's another step towards oppressive policing, and I've never been in favour of oppressive policing. It's another step towards doing away with community policing, because I don't believe that any of our police officers can be a community policeman one day and fire plastic bullets at people the next. He simply wouldn't be accepted.
Mr. Deere says he can't use plastic bullets without authorisation, but he welcomes the growing debate.
What if your house or your shop is on fire or about to be set fire to by rioters, that the police are held back by flaming barricades and missiles, out of reach and unable to help you, and that you are in imminent danger of losing your livelihood and probably your life, and are told that there is no way that the police can come to your aid at all unless they use baton rounds, would you then please vote? And I think that most people posed with the question in those terms would vote for baton rounds as a bare minimum, and in fact would probably, in the excitement of the moment, ask for much more.
Somebody, right, who's going to be faced by a policeman with a plastic bullet gun, whatever it is in his hand, right, who's supposed to fire for the legs. Now, do you expect us to believe that you, right, are going to exercise that much restraint when it comes to using plastic bullets, especially when people's skins are black?
The beat officer has got to realize he is a public servant like any other public servant. He is not the colonial force to bring the rule of the big boys over the small boys, because small boys, because of their poverty and deprivation, are never going to accept this plastic bullet, and you will be permanently at war with the youth.
Whether plastic bullets would have saved lives last September or made things worse is a matter of continuing debate. The deaths of the two Molodino brothers in a burning post office was a traumatic experience for the whole community, and for the Asians in particular. For some, it was a signal to get away from the area altogether.
ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਸ ਕਰਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦਾ ਪਰ ਉਦਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਜਦੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਦੇਖਦੀ ਉਦੋਂ ਦਿਲ ਅਪਸੈਟ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਅੰਦਰ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਿਕਲਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਨਾ ਉਦੋਂ ਫੇਰ ਇਦਾਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਈਏ ਏਰੀਆ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਪਰ ਹੁਣ ਅੱਗ ਲੱਗਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਾਣ ਨੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਦਿਲ ਕਰਦਾ ਵੀ ਛੇਤੀ ਚਲ ਜਾਈਏ ਨਹੀਂ ਛੱਡੋ
ਸਾਡੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਰ ਦੇਣਗੇ ਹਲੇ ਕੋਈ ਬਚਾਅ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਬਚਾਅ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ ਅੱਗਾਂ ਲੱਗ ਗਈਆਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਅੱਗਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਖੌਫ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਵੀ ਅੱਗਾਂ ਲੱਗ ਗਈਆਂ ਕੀ ਬਣੂਗਾ ਦਿਲ ਨੂੰ ਖੌਫ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੀ ਆ ਹੁਣ ਦਿਲ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਚੰਗਾ ਏਰੀਆ ਹੋ ਜਾ ਉੱਥੇ ਚਲੀਏ ਵੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੁਣ ਕੀ ਪਤਾ ਇਹ ਕੀ ਹੋਣਾ ਕੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ
ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਫਿਰ ਲੜਕੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਕੰਮ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ ਲੜਕੀਆਂ ਦੋਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੈਰਿਜ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਹੈਂਸਵਰਥ ਵਿੱਚ ਚਲ ਜਾਣਾ ਹੈ ਘਰ ਲਿਆ ਹੈ
ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਲੋਜ਼ਾ ਦਾ ਇਲਾਕਾ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਉਧਰ ਹੈਂਸਵਰਥ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੈ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੀ ਖਿਆਲ ਹੈ
ਪਰ ਦਿਲ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਜਾਣ ਨੂੰ ਅਜੇ
ਜਾਣਾ ਪੈਣਾ
ਘਰ ਆਪਣਾ ਰੇ ਕੜੀ
After the riots, Handsworth was seen as a place to avoid, and this had serious consequences for the shopkeepers, some of whom trade from the market set up by the council after their shops were burnt out.
From what I gather, people have been frightened away from both Lozelles Road and to some extent Soho Road. And certainly, I think if you ask any of the established traders along here, they're facing big problems because of the lack of custom since the riots.
Tuesday. I was here for the whole day. All I sell out was 28 pence.
But apart from establishing the market, many traders feel that the council has done nothing to bring about any permanent regeneration of the area.
One rather feels that from discussions that I've had with people in the city, is that this attitude that if they were to go out into Lozelles Road and really put down a shopping centre, which is upmarket, Riots is another area, may well use that as a precedence to say, well, look what they've had down in Lozelles Road, let's burn down my neighbourhood. That's the sort of vibration I get out of the city. And I'm trying to say to them, well, look, that's a very negative attitude.
We've made 3 visits to the town hall. We've been shown every sympathy, but we've been told all our suggestions have got to go to committee. As soon as it went to committee, all our suggestions for improvement of the area have been refused.
Yes. I had a meeting with the Traders Association.
Yes.
With Councillor Mrs Brown about 10 days ago. And they were telling us about a proposal, in effect, to expand the market by putting a large marquee on the adjacent car park to house this shop that was very severely damaged, which deals with ex-catalogue merchandise. Has any progress developed on that? Is that still a runner? Is it being looked at?
Well, I think we were anticipating that they would be in touch with us, and they don't seem to have been.
You know, the bloke who wants to put up the marquee, we were expecting him to come to us and say this is what he wants to do, but we haven't heard from them.
They've certainly not discussed it with us or mentioned it to us.
They're entitled to feel that it's in the system. And therefore, if they haven't come to you, I suggest that you might think about going to them.
Presumably this is Basil Clark.
I think he's probably the best bloke to start off with, yes.
Yeah. The spin-off effect of procurement policies of the council and other public sector bodies, which will help to improve employment prospects for local employers in the area if they have contracts to supply public authorities with certain goods and services. No, Bill, I wonder if you'd just say a few words about how far you've got on that.
We've stuck basically with the business of construction and putting resources on council work into the community and in making sure that council schemes promote local employment. We feel that there is quite a good field there for focusing on local contractors and making sure they get special tender opportunities, if you like, to apply for the work within a certain field.
This new departure in council policy is in line with the new Department of the Environment guidelines. In the past, things were very different, and it remains to be seen what effect, if any, this new policy will have.
Black builders were not accepted as contractors on the urban renewal schemes. This had serious effect upon the entire community because the city handed over the contracts to these contractors who came from outside the areas. Some from Milton Keyes, Solihull, Sutton Coldfield. These contractors were trying to make as much money as possible out of the city council. They built nice new walls, put in new front doors, and perhaps new windows. But you want to tell me that these houses are pre-1919 houses, and a lot of them would be in terrible condition inside because they still suffer from dampness and various problems inside. Until now, you've got people who are still complaining about drafts coming into their homes, roofs still leaks, and different problems. So as a matter of fact, the money that was being spent in this area does not actually benefit the entire community.
Some of the main beneficiaries of government spending in the area have been the housing associations, who, funded by central and local government, convert older and cheaper properties into accommodation for the homeless.
Well, this road must be the most expensive road in England because just doing a quick calculation, there's been £12 million spent, and that's not on the whole road, that's on 3/4 of the road, and that's just a very, very conservative figure. There could have been more spent. The housing associations have been allowed to turn too many houses into flats, so we've got a kind of floating population, and when we made inquiries, the average stay of a person in a flat is about 6.5 weeks on average, so the whole place is really used as a transit camp.
We know, in a big city like ours, that local authority, the decision makers, get more and more remote from local communities. And what we're concerned about is trying to translate to those groups of people the view that they should have some ownership in the decision-making process.
Well, they come down and they talk to people, but then they go away and do exactly what they want to do in any case. That is their consultation.
Today was the day when the people came out onto the streets to acclaim their hero.
The Muhammad Ali Centre was one result of community consultation, but it has become yet another example of how easily things can go wrong in Handsworth.
The opening ceremony had to be delayed as the police finally managed to get Ali in. The doors were locked and bolted, leaving hundreds outside.
Over 12 years ago, this was the dream of over 54,000 odd people. Ordinary, hard-working people from all over the country to build a building that would serve this community.
The Muhammad Ali Centre was built with a combination of locally raised money and council funding, but ever since it opened, the centre has been involved in continuing allegations over mismanagement and corruption and counter-claims of underfunding and political backstabbing.
recently in the auditor's report that went in front of the press, I asked for copies of funds that was given by the county council. I noticed the Muhammad Ali Social Club was given 40,400. I never know such a club. I noticed also that £9,600 a year for 3 to 4 years was provided for a manager of the centre. At no time anyone informed me of these matters at all. One thing I must say, that a political official brought in a fundraising agency to raise a lot of money for us. And they never raised 1 penny, but they took thousands of pounds from us. If there was misuse of funds, the police or somebody would have taken action against me. It is that we come under strain and we had to make sure the place is open. And I had to make sure at all times that I pay off the most urgent bills, even the district auditor to accept that. But I would rather the place run properly to fulfill the dreams of the people, even if I become a sacrificial lamb.
It is too easy for other people to set up black leaders, black politicians, black councillors, whatever. Don't just jump into it and say that politician, that councillor, that leader is at fault. Try to find out why and make sure that we've got our facts right. But I repeat, if we find that these people are misbehaving in any of the areas, then I think I'd be very willing to say yes, they must be dealt with properly.
20 years ago, a police assault on a pregnant black woman in Watts, California sparked some of the worst race riots seen in America. The Troubles triggered a chain reaction of rioting and looting. It was race violence on a new scale for American cities. The reasons Handsworth burnt in 1985 was because no one heeded the lessons learnt then, according to Watts community leader Ted Watkins. He says the Handsworth riots were caused for the same reasons. Ted Watkins had last been in Handsworth in June. Today, accompanied by Afro-Caribbean leaders, he went back. His organization today, worth $50 million, was funded by a trade union loan and employs thousands of young blacks. He wants the same self-help message to get across in Birmingham. Once in the Lozells Road, Mr. Watkins spent several hours chatting to shop owners. He'd already met some in June. To each owner, he rammed home his message that money in grant form wasn't enough to rebuild. He urged them to encourage each other to start their own businesses using black workers. Once, he says, black people have jobs, they'll have money and self-respect. And in that kind of atmosphere, nobody but the criminals would have any cause or reason to take to the streets again.
I see where their police are being beefed up with more bullets and better weapons. No discussions at all about a civilian review board with participation of officials to review grievances that blacks have. There seems to be the priorities is not put on getting involved really in the problems of black unemployment, although I see where some 10 million pounds are being paid for some of the destruction. I still don't see the problem of unemployment being addressed as far as the black community is concerned.
Right. The principal item of business on tonight's agenda is the introduction of Molly Evans, who is the representative from the Watts Labour Community Action Committee. We've asked Molly to come along tonight, really, to explain what Watts is all about.
It's really, the organisation is the Watts Labour Community Action Committee, which was formed in Watts, which is a district in Los Angeles, and this was immediately after the riots in 1965. And it was set up to try to get maximum community involvement. It was generally felt that the community, the riots and the burnt out areas and all the things that happened took place because there wasn't enough community involvement. They are largely into building houses, and there's a training program built in, together with journeymen from the union who train the people. So the training is not just training for its own sake, but actually training to do specific things and skills that can be utilized in the area. They try to get as many contracts to do things from government rather than have grants, so that they don't, it's not a handout. They are performing a task and they're getting paid for it. And this gives the community some sort of pride. They're doing what they want to do, what they think their community needs, and not what the authorities saying you must have, right?
The problems which may be existing here, which we haven't actually determined as such, but those problems are different from the problems that they were in LA in 65.
10 years ago in London, in Britain, if you said that there'd be riots in inner cities, I'm sure that you would say, no, never, right? Today we're having it here, right? And the problems of high unemployment, of young people being alienated and all that, were similar problems that existed in Watts. That the young people didn't feel part of their community, and things. These are very similar. These are here in Handsworth.
I'm not being pessimistic. I want to make absolutely sure we've got our foundations absolutely right before we build on them.
WSCAC survived 20 years, and that's because of its innovativeness, because it doesn't stand still. It reappraises its performance from time to time. Ted has always invited people to attend, to go to Watts, to see the work that he's done there himself. I think, Gus, you've been to Watts.
We've had a long experience in Birmingham over the last 5 years of working with American-based organisations. The greatest need now, as you know and I know, is training and getting action rather than actually having long reports and long feasibility studies, because while these studies are being prepared and done, the situation on the streets is certainly not getting any better.
So what are the lessons to be learned? Do they lie in the American view of black capitalism, and does it differ from the Thatcherite view of small businesses as the saviour of Britain?
I know that I could go on the road now and pick up any youth and ask them, 9 to 10 of them to come and work with me, and then come and work with me for what me is. But I know that them won't go and work for anybody else, not so easy. Because them know if them come and work with me, they will get treated good, yeah? I don't really want, like, my children, them growing up, right, and have to be facing the things them like what me see on the road, what them have to face, you know what I mean, and discrimination and things like that. So me work harder, so that when them grow up, they have a better chance in life. I want to stay in Handsworth. This is where the majority of the black people them is, in Handsworth, right? And in Handsworth, you know, you don't really have nothing for us. There's nowhere where anyone can go if they're out of job to stay, except hanging around on the road and things like that. Especially like Rasta and things like that, because we really get discriminated more than anybody else in Handsworth. And it have to succeed that it can give other people out there the incentive, or at least to try a thing. They will say, yeah, them can do it as well. Life, at least it is worth living. Everybody talking about bringing in the water cannons and doing this and doing that, but you don't hear anybody talking about, yeah, man, we build up somewhere on Lascelles Road, or build up this for people to go and start a little job or do a little thing. You know, all I'm talking about is bringing in the water cannon or bringing in the gun or whatsoever. No, that can't help.
September last year, and Douglas Hurd comes to Handsworth the day after what was then Britain's worst night of rioting. His presence, though, sparks off even more rioting. He's bundled away and forced to take cover in Handsworth police station. Today, he appeared not to be taking any chances, driving with a police escort to a variety of indoor meetings.
Would you have felt safe going on the streets this morning?
I think entirely, yes.
Why do you think
entirely? Well, because I have my aim this morning is to listen to people who are in action on this subject. And the best way of listening to people is actually to have small meetings and listen to them, and that's what I've been doing.
At another indoor meeting, Mr. Hurd met some of the specials who told him about life on the streets of Handsworth.
But there's still a fair amount of hostility in the community. There's still a fair amount of volatility here. Things can happen very, very easily, can be sparked off by very little. But at the same time, there's a tremendous effort going on into working with the community in a whole variety of ways.
As he left, Mr. Hurd said he was hopeful, he would be no stronger than that rioting wouldn't break out again this summer.
He rarely comes to places like Handsworth, Tottenham and Brixton announced. He knows very well his unpopularity in our communities.
The government, which is made up majority of white people, think that them know what is the best thing for black people.
I've been to see the government, I've been to see local leaders, I've been to see national leaders, and no one's the slightest bit interested in Handsworth or the inner city.
Given that there are so many conflicting interests and that the final decision rests with the local authority, one can question how much real power there is at grassroots level. The standard answer, of course, is that it's in the ballot box.
The first opportunity the people had to exercise their power was in the city council election in May.
The city council and the people in power, they never accept us. They never ask us anything, what we want and what is the need of the area. We think and we believe that we are the forgotten people.
On the council side, it's been wrongly represented. Somebody got to stand up for the grassroots people, the poor people in Handsworth. Nobody seems to care about them.
The local city councillor for this area, what we're standing on, what the market is on, I don't know him. I don't know his name. I've never seen him in the past 8 months. That's how much help I've had of him.
England forever, and it will be forever if we get the Conservative Party in.
Very good.
It's got to be Conservative, and it must always be Conservative. Understand?
I do, Mrs. Roach, and the point is that I needn't stay with you too long, as I've got a lot of people to see, and I've got other people to see, but I'm quite sure that you are a Conservative.
You can bet your bottom dollar on that.
I'd love to see them being in a position where they can be influential so that the normal black community can sort of praise them and work with them and be happy to have them around. Right now, I have mixed feelings about it.
The rest of the politicians, where are they? County councillors, city councillors, central government MPs. Now, we haven't got one MP, we have 3 MPs in this area. Where are they?
Let me tell you why they don't turn up, because it's a political issue. If you are seen taking the side of one group against another, you can lose yourself a lot of votes. Now, if you support the black community, you're going to lose a lot of votes perhaps amongst the Asian community under the present situation, because the Asians have all moved off of the Community Relations Council with the friction and so on that's being caused. If you support one side and you're seen to support that side, you'll lose votes from this side. And it's a political issue and it's dynamite. And the best thing you can do in Losells or the inner city is to keep away from it. And then if it comes to a general election next year or the local elections in May, you're not having the finger put on you by any one section of the community. That's why, mister, you're not getting all your politicians down here in Losells on this occasion. Now,
Speaker, since 1979, the government has allocated £1,900 million in urban programme grants to inner cities.
Perversity. The government chooses to spend money on maintaining unemployment rather than on creating jobs.
£7 million being spent now in Handsworth under the urban programme. Indeed, my right honourable friend has been closely involved with that.
Continue to see busloads of outsiders coming in to do work that they can do themselves.
But it seems to me we want to get far more value for money rather than to increase the money
The contribution so far of the City Action Team, so far as I am aware and my constituents are aware, is a big, fat zero.
The polls that I mentioned are those on an election day, and we haven't done too badly of those.
And that represented a majority of 3,085 for Mr. Rabani.
Why are you smiling? People are weeping in Handsworth.
When Prince Charles first arrived in Villa Road, crowds were a bit thin. There was plenty of spare crash barrier to go round. But the welcome was warm enough as the Prince met officials of Handsworth's employment scheme. Their job is to reduce pockets of Handsworth unemployment, which run to 80%. But upstairs, the Prince found real hope in a thriving fashion firm. HIM started as a...
It is said that if you have the ingredients for an explosion and do nothing to change those ingredients, then the potential for an explosion will continue to exist. Those explosive ingredients still exist in Handsworth today, after a year of committee meetings, a plethora of platitudes, reports and community consultations.
Disperse or special weapons will be used.
But this time the police are better equipped.
The warning is the last riot control police will give before the plastic bullets, or baton rounds as the police prefer, are fired. They arrived in a consignment of 1,000 earlier this month. Since then, a team of 15 firearms experts have been training at a secret firing ground in a disused steelworks. Each officer has been told to attend an initial 6 sessions, to be followed by regular refresher courses. When used on a target 40 yards away, the bullet still packs a punch.
There's been a lot of discussion, there's been a lot of dialogue. But in terms of practicalities, in terms of some mechanism being activated to alleviate those conditions that triggered off the disturbances, the rebellion of last year, nothing significantly has changed.
On Villa Road, the Prince gave some of his discreetly placed special branch men more security worries when he went on one of his unscheduled walkabouts. Not everywhere in Britain can you meet Sikhs, Muslims, Hindus, Rastafarians and Anglo-Saxon Protestants in the space of 10 yards and 30 seconds. He won't forget Handsworth in a hurry, but he'll stay in a few people's minds too. You glad you met him?
Oh yeah, for sure. I can meet him again if he come again. You know, come next year again if he wants.
They keep rubbing it down our votes that deserve